Hi, I'm Dave Osborne, Chief Sales Officer at Insightly. Welcome to Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. Today, I'm joined by the legend, Doug Landis. Doug is a friend of the pod. He's a friend of Insightly. He has many years in B2B sales, coaching several SaaS businesses. He's a growth partner at Emergence Capital. He's the most stylish man in tech. Also, former chief storyteller from Box. Please welcome Mr. Doug Landis.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you, buddy. No longer
it's
in Austin,
been a long time.
It's been totally a whopping 2 weeks.
That's it. So Doug actually was a keynote at our SCO last week, and for those sales leaders looking to bring on a heavy hitter for a keynote, Doug Landis is your guy, about as good as it gets.
Yeah,
but,
I would gladly do it. I would gladly do it. In fact, I've been talking to Jen Allen a lot lately about the two of us doing like a 2-person show.
Heck yeah!
I think that would be really, really fun. We've done it a few times and it's been wildly successful. So yeah, more on that to come.
Man, we'll be looking forward to that. Those are two awesome speakers and thought leaders in tech sales. But let's dive into it. So. Yeah. Let's start with why. So why are buying committees more common today than they were, say, 5 years ago?
I'd actually say I don't think anything's changed in the last 5 years, other than the fact that there are more people involved in the buying decision right now, largely predicated on the fact that we are in an economic situation where CFOs, well, look, if you just kind of think and kind of take a step back, right? So investors, board members, executives, the pressure, you feel this, like you're in your executive committee. The reality is like the belts are tightening in terms of financial decisions that we're going to make for the business. The big shift in focus for a lot of our companies has been focused on efficient growth, profitability. What is this path to profitability versus growth at all costs? When it's a growth at all costs mindset, your job as an executive, as a leader, is to empower your teams to help make important strategic decisions, even spend money. Whereas now in this environment, it's like, okay, cool, go do the research, bring it back to me, and then we're going to discuss how this fits into all of our priorities. We need to get more people involved in this conversation, and typically CFOs now more involved in deals over $10,000. So the truth is the buying committee is changed in terms of size, but the process itself hasn't necessarily changed. People have been buying in committees for ages.
100%. So, I mean, and you brought up before, right? We're seeing the CFO get much more involved than we were, say, 3 years ago. And even in like purchases that are 25K, 10, like what we normally thought were relatively incremental purchases in past years. So, I mean, what's your thought process there? Is the essence to try to mitigate risk? Or is that pessimistic thinking and paranoid thinking from a sales guy?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you said that. I think every seller should be paranoid, period. Right. You should operate from a place of paranoia, knowing that, the deal's never done until until you're delivering on your promise. And honestly, the deal's really never even done even after that, because so many things could go sideways. But look, CFOs are getting involved because at the end of the day, they're on the hook now, right? So board investors are like, yo, what are you spending your money on? CFOs like, okay, does this really make a whole lot of sense? Is this something that we should be prioritizing? Because instead of making 10 decisions throughout the year, I'm only making 3. And so as a result, I want to be involved in the process. I want to basically be the final say. I think the challenge that we all face is so many people think that, since the CFO is going to be involved in a decision, we need to go sell to the CFO. Right? Okay, I need to go prospect, I need to engage, I need to go sell to the CFO. And actually I'll throw the question back to you, but I have my take on that. Do you think that's the right approach for an AE to go try and engage with the CFO?
Look, I think timing is going to be relevant. I'm sure there's going to be qualifying that moves all the way up. But I think for a lot of these purchasing decisions, if we don't have access to the CFO, I think that's just adding risk into your deal.
Sure. Because there's a lot of unknowns, right?
That's right.
There's a ton of unknowns. However, there's also something else to consider. What if it's less about selling to the CFO and more about updating the CFO? So
Yeah.
think about it. Like if
Kind of
you're a
responsible
CFO,
versus informed.
right. So like if you're a CFO or even a CEO, it's like, look, you hire people to go do the work. It's so, we often talk about like, oh, you got to get to power, get to power, get to power. Well, oftentimes power, CFO, CEO, like, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. I got enough stuff to think through, right? Right. Like I got enough to navigate. I've got a board meeting coming up in the next week. I don't want to talk to anybody. I want my team to talk to all the different partners or vendors to evaluate options for solving for some of the core problems that we're trying to solve for this year. And I want them to bring that to me. What was their analysis? What was their process for doing their due diligence? What are their recommendations? And then we'll discuss as a team. So if that's the case, and this is kind of how buying committees operate, if that's the case, then do I need to try and make it awkward and uncomfortable to reach out to the CFO when we know the CFO really doesn't want to talk to you? Or what if it's hey, want to keep you informed because, look, I recognize the fact that in most of my conversations I'm having right now, CFO is typically going to be involved in this conversation, usually behind the scenes. As a result, I just want to keep you up to date as to what's been happening, the conversations that are happening, and kind of the progress that we're making to help you solve one of your more immediate and what I would consider more important problems.
Feels like much more of like a benign offer, right? Like, hey, I just want to keep you in the loop versus just kind of commanding it. I know there's a lot of, we'll call it aggressive kind of enterprise sales tactics or companies that just kind of force their way right to the decision maker or to the economic buyer, whether they want to or not. And you know, to their credit, a lot of times it works out pretty well, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it rubs them the wrong way and kind of ruins your relationship with your point of contact.
But I would also, the flip side of this, of course, because I like to see all sides, is it kind of depends on what problem you're trying to solve for and the type of solution. So I'm going to use Insightly as an example. For a CRM type solution, that's a really big disruptive problem to solve, right? And it touches almost everybody in the entire organization. So given that, I would suggest, if I were out selling Insightly as an example to a prospect, I would suggest getting you or Anthony, your boss, involved as an executive relationship, largely because we know how potentially disruptive a solution, a new CRM can be in an organization. And we want to make sure that there's some connective tissue across the entire organization. So in that case, it makes sense for me to try and make an introduction between you and the CFO or Anthony and the CFO versus me reaching out and engaging with the CFO. So I'm being a little controversial against my own point, which is don't disagree, don't not sell to the CFO. Just be thoughtful about well, why would they want to have a conversation? And if they do want to have a conversation, you can come up with an idea as to why, then think about who should be having that conversation.
That's it.
Oftentimes, I think as AEs, we think that we are far more important than we actually are. And a lot of times our job is to be that quarterback. And it's I don't necessarily have to be the one that has that conversation with the CFO, but I want to make sure somebody in our organization above me is an appropriate title match.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, we call that tactic kind of executive sponsorship, right? Because you may have a champion or a mobilizer, as I know you like to call it, but then there's also that executive sponsorship, right? It'll depend on who the sponsor is on their end, right? If it's their CEO, then maybe getting your CEO or, but just aligning a C-level to their C-level, a VP to their VP. And if you can line that up, could de-risk the deal considerably and actually create for more successful relationship long-term.
It's look, we together are in the business of making you successful, of helping you better support your customers' customers, right? And so we're going to do this together. We're not just selling you a piece of software just to sell you a piece of software to make you more efficient, make you whatever kind of internal metrics you think are really matter. I think at the end of the day, it's we're in this so that you can go sell more to your customers. And if that's not happening, if we're not hitting the mark together, then we need to have a discussion about that.
That's it.
And having that executive alignment and relationship allows, to your point, it allows for that communication to happen. Hey, listen, this seems to be working well. We want to talk to other people that you've worked with about some other little things that we might be able to do, make it even better.
So, and one last tidbit before we move on to the next topic is when you're having those kind of executive alignment meetings, right? So there's going to be a pre-sales, probably a few touch points, but then obviously post-sales, assuming it's a strategic enough deal, I think it's important to maintain executive sponsorship throughout in that alignment. When you're having those meetings, make sure you're bringing value. Like I think I've been on both sides of this, right? Yes. I've been on both sides of this where I'm like the sponsor on the sales side, like selling to, but I've also been the sponsor on the buy side, right? Where I'm buying technology and I'm kind of the budget owner of those items. And I can tell you, like, I'll go to these summaries on the buy side and they're just like checking in. It's like almost like a normal QBR. And look, I got a lot of stuff I'm working on. Like, this is not a good use of my, I got a lot of things I could be doing with this hour versus you running through my monthly active users or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So it's like, bringing something that's going to help me move better, faster, easier, or else you're going to lose that spot. Like, that sponsor's never going to show up again.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. What's the point? Yeah. I think too, that's so like everybody listening to this, pay attention to what Dave just said, because that is so critical. This is why I started with, hey, by the way, most of the time CFOs are not going to want to talk to you because what value you're going to bring to them. And they're like, okay, so what? I trust my team more than I trust you because I don't know you yet. And so even when you make that executive alignment, you create that executive relationship, there has to be value in that. And what is the value that you're actually delivering? So let's say, if I were selling to you, Dave, I'd be like, hey, Dave, listen, I just wanted to show you, this is a 5-minute conversation. I want to show you as a result of our partnership, what you are now able to deliver to your customers or how much more value you're delivering to your customers. This is a really important point you should probably take to your next board meeting, right? Imagine that. You'd be like, oh, thank you. Make a note of that. That's a really good point, right? Because, getting ready for board meetings and training us, we all know that.
Huge. So let's maybe quickly change gears, right?
Yeah,
for sure. Something you and I have talked about.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it always is. Something you and I have talked about quite a bit over the past few years that we've known each other. Our biggest enemy in a deal cycle is the status quo, right? And I think the stat that you threw out there, it's a majority of deals. It's 60+% of deals we're losing due to the status quo, right? Or do nothing. So maybe talk a little bit like the dynamic there, right? Like because I know you've talked about like good is good enough, right? Is being part of the problem, but I'd love to kind of I think you have a very strong thesis on why these kinds of things are happening and maybe what we could do about it.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, my good friend Jen that I was just telling you about, like she has this whole, narrative around the cost of inaction. And I think a lot of people like to get us to the cost of inaction because that's going to help drive urgency, right? But before we actually get to the cost of inaction, we just need to unpack like why they might actually not want to take action. And one of my core theses in life, in selling, in period, is one of the things that's part of our job as sales leaders is to help our prospects make a conscious decision. That's our job. Is to help. If I'm working with you, Dave, and I'm engaging in a conversation with you, my job is to partner with you so that you can make a conscious decision as to whether or not you want to, if this problem is big enough for you to try and invest some time, money, energy, resources to solve it. And oh, by the way, if you decide that it is, then let's make a conscious decision as to what direction you want to go together. That may be partnering with us. That may be partnering with somebody else. It also might be, as we uncover, sticking with what you're currently doing because it's just way easier. Or it's safer, or there's less risk of something going sideways. Because by the way, you've got this huge conference coming up in 3 months. And if something were to go sideways right now, this could potentially derail that. So I just want to be really honest about that. I think oftentimes with the status quo, we don't bring it up early enough in the conversation. Right. Like I'm a believer that right at the beginning, let's just say this is one of our first calls together, Dave, one of the things, how I view my role in our relationship, Dave, is one, I'm here to partner with you to help you at the core make a conscious decision, right? That decision may be to stick with what you're currently doing. Now we want to dig into that and why that may or may not make sense. Just I want to call that out because at the end of the day, I know there's a greater than 50% likelihood from all the other conversations that I have that sticking with what you're currently doing is easier. It's safer. And oh, by the way, in order for you to actually make a decision, you are going to have to get everybody else in the organization on board. And that's a lift. I'm here to help. But no matter what, I just want to make sure that we've got everything on the table and we're talking about it all. And I'm going to help you navigate some of those internal conversations that you're likely going to have because I've done this before.
And you're so, and I know you how strongly you feel about the Gestapo-like line of questioning that typically happens in discovery.
Yeah, totally.
What Doug just kind of walked through, and he actually gave you the talk track, actually, that's how discovery should go, how they should feel. It was very natural. It was very partnership oriented. He's not using fancy buzzwords. He's more just like, this is us having a conversation, kind of deciding what's going to be the right next step. Are we a good fit or not? Like, let's be honest.
And that's also I've seen the movie before, Dave. I've seen it before. And my job is to help us look around corners, anticipate the things we're likely going to face.
Right. Doug, I think you and I we could shoot the stuff all day, but maybe just to wrap up really quick. So we talked about committees getting bigger. What are the most common pitfalls that you're seeing that sellers are making when trying to access or work through these larger and larger committees? And how can they what are the flags they should be seeing?
One of the biggest challenges in buying groups that we all have to just be really conscious of is that there's not alignment on the actual problem. So part of our job as sellers, if I'm working with you, Dave, is hey, Dave, one of the things that we're going to have to do in time is get everybody together that is going to be involved in this decision to some degree or who's impacted by this, and make sure we get alignment on the problem. What problem are we solving and why does this matter? Why should this be one of the top 3 priorities that we're focusing our time, energy, effort, and resources on? Because if we can't get agreement on that, I don't matter. My solution, what I'm bringing to the table, does not matter. If you and all of your executives and everybody that's involved in your buying decisions can't agree on what fundamentally the problem is, and why does it matter to solve?
All right, Doug, appreciate you, man. Great having you. Great seeing you. That's all the time we have in this episode of Closing Time. Appreciate you joining. Always a pleasure.
It's always good to be here, man.
Remember to subscribe to this channel, like the video, tick the bell for notifications so you don't miss an episode. We'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks.